All right, thank you very much. Can I have my slide, please? Well, before my slide goes on, let me introduce myself properly to you. My name is Willie Soon, and indeed I'm a scientist. I've been working on this topic of factors of climate change and what causes climate to vary and change for nearly 35 to 36 years now. Ron just reminded me that that means you must be a very slow learner. So indeed. Well, in case you like the slide or anything, I can be contacted at willie@ceres-science.com. My first 32 years, I worked at that nameless institution named Harvard, and now I'm actually a free agent. And of course, you come to our website too for all kinds of information. We always have the scientific and the layman kind of information, so do come and study this. And my purpose here is actually to provide you a scientific case for the use of fossil fuel and more CO2 indeed. We do not want to cut down CO2. We don't even want to do any such thing that they're talking about. Nonsense. So let me start with a quote on a very unfortunate decision that was made in the United States Supreme Court, one day after the April Fool Day on 2007. You can see from this dissenting opinion from the great Justice Scalia, who tried to say that what is it? Because namely that they want to cause CO2 and air pollutants so that US EPA must regulate, right? So he indeed said that if you call anything airborne that enter into the atmosphere to be an air pollutant, then Frisbee and flatulence must be qualified as an air pollutant. So it's a very ridiculous thing. We're a very anti-science movement now. And then about, I don't know, 2013 or 2017 or so, another great justice of ours, Samuel Alito, actually went to, I think, Claremont Institute and gave this speech. I just want to put up this quote. Now, what is a pollutant? A pollutant is a subject that is harmful to human beings or to animals or to plants. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is not harmful to ordinary things, to human beings or to animals or to plants. It's actually needed for plant growth. All of us are exhaling carbon dioxide right now. So if it's a pollutant, we are all air polluting, right? We're all polluting. Well, I say it even simpler. To cause CO2 and air pollutant is a corruption of the English language. Plants do not call it pollutant, they call it dinner, okay? So I'm sorry. So indeed, I think that the science perspective has to be, if it's not pursuing a truth, I think that's not worth living in some sense. So God has given this, purpose for us to pursue truth and nothing but the whole truth, right? So indeed, we got to keep going. It is an open secret. I'm very glad that Jonathan has given you a very good introduction on this fake energy. I wouldn't even call them renewable or green. We have been running away from basically so-called very diffuse sources of energy, which is basically burning wood and all that stuff, towards higher energy density. This is a real problem. And this, let me show the graph. For 200 years, we've been running away from that, right? Basically, using wood and all that stuff towards higher density stuff like coal, natural gas, and then, of course, the latest revolution is actually nuclear. Once we understand quantum mechanics, we know what to do with this nuclear energy, harnessing the power of atoms. And indeed, if you follow this trend, you will reach 100% renewable again by 2400, so 375 years from now. So indeed, let's keep waiting. It is the dark ages. Maybe they prefer to use more whale oil. They want to kill more whale, right, for oil for your soap. Or maybe we have another problem. Have any of you heard of the Great Horse Manure Crisis of 1894? This is a well-known problem. In New York, 1900, we have a population of 100,000 horses. They produce 2.5 million pounds of manure per day. I don't know, Al Gore should pick up that job. I'll give him a job. How about CO2 emission from all human activities? Let me give you a bit of preview, and in fact, it's surprising statistics that no one even talk about that much. Let's start with this graph. It's not, okay, it's showing. It's not supposed to show the second part, but anyway, this is a US CO2 emission from 1970 until now. I will stop about 2005 or 2008 or so. It's been going downwards since 2008. How many of you heard of this before? Right? I mean, this is really a serious statistic. So what are we supposed to do more about this? I mean, this is basically a problem, issue of basically we're going from using a lot of coals to basically natural gas, right? The natural gas revolution. In fact, the US EPA has noticed that for the last, from 2005, last 20 years or so, the US power plant emission has decreased by 38%. So maybe they want to propose that maybe we should think about not doing that anymore. You know, that's enough. So ridiculous, right? And you will see the reasoning is even stronger of why you must not do that. We must not keep trying to control ourselves and actually, slash our own throat for this no reason. There's another very important fact. For actually the last decades or so, that the global, if you average over all the globe, including China and all of that, it's been flat for almost a decade. That tells you there's something very wrong about our understanding of how carbon dioxide actually works in the biosphere, in the land, the soil, oceans, and so on and so forth. Yet the CO2 continue to increase. The hint is basically that I'm trying to get at is that it's a very hard scientific problem. We're trying to quantify the problem. But the question here is that immediately that if you say that all the carbon dioxide in the air that is increasing right now is caused by fossil fuel, it's not a tenable answer. It's not entirely correct. So we need to work on that problem. That's a hint. So essentially, it's about this kind of people who are trying to control, to tax the air, right? Because that's all the purpose is. Imagine taxing the air, right? What else are they not going to tax? Maybe your underwear or something, I don't know, it's dangerous. We must not let them get away with this. So, but isn't it true and correct that rising atmospheric carbon dioxide is causing global boiling? How many of you heard global boiling before? It's quite new, of course. It's from one of those UN big head talking nonsense all day. Instead of global warming, they change to climate change, and then they change to all kinds of terms, and then finally now it's global boiling because it has to be very urgent now. Don't put your lobster into the air, right? It's going to be burning. Well, I'm a scientist, so scientists were very serious. They say, in the question of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual. That's Galileo Galilei, right? The smart man. Now I want to teach you how to look at this problem. This is about the climate. Now I show you a temperature record of the United States, contaminants, our lower 48 states. This is actually plotting the Monday record for almost 130 years or so, right? This is plotting the season. Look, the range is 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? And then if we ask ourselves, if you take the last 4 years, let's say 2020 to 2024, you take the seasonal, the monthly, you see the temperature change is on the order of 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius. Now let's ask ourselves, how much does the radiation come in? It's about 210 watt per meter square. Okay? So if you take that two number, indeed that you're going to find that even for the doubling of carbon dioxide, the most you're going to get is 0.5 degrees Celsius. That's 5 degrees right here, hot. Cannot detect this thing. This is nonsense that they're talking about. This is the trick, by the way. They always take the season out so that they show you that it's warming and all that stuff. So it's really be careful of what you're looking at in terms of data. So now it's a direct comparison of the energetic involved in the carbon dioxide and the sun itself, right? Which is my favorite object of studying. This is just a line to show you that over the last, 275 years, 175 years, that's the amount of carbon dioxide you added. Of course, we're plotting the energy from January to December, right? It's nothing. This is why, no matter what you say, the carbon dioxide cannot drive the climate system. To talk about this is that I want to be sure that you know this. Sorry that I imposed some number, because science is all about number, very serious. The sun is a very powerful object in terms of the energetic, not the size. Of course, size is not important. It's 110 across you can put 110 Earth across the sun, but the power is 2 billion times stronger than the Earth. Even the amount of energy generated by the Earth itself, which is the radiogenic heat, we already measure those things. It's another 10,000 times smaller than the converted energy from the sun. So everything from the planet, on the planet Earth, including my hair, is all powered by the sun essentially, right? There's no way, if for a comparison, by the way, we can pulse a laser. In Chinese Shanghai lab, they were able to do very, very high power laser, but you can only power that for pulsing for seconds, right? You cannot do anything like the sun is doing. So there's no other means. By the way, if you're curious how much carbon dioxide can do, is 10 to the minus 22 watt on that same scale. That tells you that there's just no way that carbon dioxide can do much. Now let's study the question of what is climate, and I want to show you how you look at this perspective in the right way, which means we examine CO2 versus another famous thing called the greenhouse gas called the water vapor. So carbon dioxide, and then it's not important at all in a climate system. It's actually water, H2O, in all of its three phases: the vapor form, the ice form, and the liquid form, the solid form, right? My colleague and I, Professor David Legates at University of Delaware, has been modifying this graph for a very long time. This is talking about how much the energy is changing all around the planet Earth and all the different components. If you study what is the role of water vapor versus carbon dioxide, you will see this. Water vapor is involved in every aspect of the system, right? Including the rain, the precipitation, the cloud cover, snow area, soil moisture, evaporation, this and that. Well, carbon dioxide only involved that one little part, and then they say that carbon dioxide is going to drive the rest of the system, right? Which is like a control CO2 knob in the room here. Like if Al Gore is here, we're going to set it up at 1,000 and it's going to warm up the place, right? It's not true. It's not going to happen. Physically impossible. Here's the proof that CO2 play no roles. And I plotted two curves here. The blue curve is actually the global temperature measured by the satellite, okay? And then the red curve is actually the water vapor content in the atmosphere. They kind of fit, isn't it? Up and down. By the way, be confident. One thing about science is that when you learn something, you be confident. Even though people say, oh, stop at 215, if you go to 2025, it will be the same relationship because it holds. It's a physics problem. So we know that one. And then my colleague, Dimitris Kosoyanis from Greece, University of Athens Technical University, recently quantified the role of carbon dioxide versus water vapor and cloud. This is the number for the CO2 for long wave, which means the infrared radiation coming down to surface, and then long wave outgoing. The role of CO2 is no more than 4 to 5%. Everything is controlled by water vapor and cloud, right? That's why be careful when you started to say that water vapor is the most important greenhouse gas in the planet, they will try to tell you that there is evil man-made H2O as well. So be careful about that. So where is the air CO2 is doing now? It's continuing to rise, by the way, right? And that's where the puzzle is. Then the question is, where is the greenhouse effect from CO2? Here's a study that appears in 2016 or so. And actually, this paper is like a fluke. They are not supposed to appear in the journal because accidentally these folks are writing in a very careful way so they're able to get this published. But most of us in the science area, we know about this fact. It's called the greenhouse effect taking a vacation from CO2, okay? Hiatus, right? Well, here's the actual data. The actual data is showing you that if you quantify the greenhouse effect from 1980 to about 2015 or so, you can see it's flattening it up. How can it be while the carbon dioxide keep rising? Where's the greenhouse effect keep increasing? This effect tells you that the whole greenhouse effect in the climate system is controlled by the cancellation between water vapor and cloud itself. So this physics is very robust. We kind of understand this part of it, right? That's why no matter what they say, this CO2 ain't gonna do much, okay? This is why the famous guy named Albert Einstein said that no amount of experimentation can prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. This is actually related to his formulation of special relativity, which was, there's 100 Berlin academicians, right? Saying that Einstein is totally wrong. And then the great Einstein said, you know what, why do you need 100? If I were to be wrong, one would suffice, right? It's that simple about science. So I switch gear now. The last part of my talk is actually involving something called gas of life, CO2. Don't forget that. This is actually tank in all these greenhouses that we wanted to grow tomatoes and all that stuff during winter especially, right? Huge industry. And here's a chart showing you the level of carbon dioxide that from the human respiration. Okay, I was actually not holding my breath, so it could be about 40,000 parts per million. See, the average air out there is about 420, 430. This is actually another 100 times bigger, 40,000, right? So you can see if you hold your breath like Al Gore, holding it more time, you actually increase more carbon dioxide content in the air. So it's about 70,000 parts per million. That's 7%, right? This is why in a closed room like here, the carbon dioxide level is very, very high. In the submarine, you can see it's up to a few thousand parts per million. And it's not harmful to us. By the way, don't forget, the other limit is how low can we go. That science can also figure out, right? So you look at this science experiment that we do, right? In the glacial time, it's about 150 parts per million. If we go a little bit lower, like 100 or 120, there's no more plants. Plants will die. The species will all go away. This is how serious the problem is. This is why you must not let them get away by saying that, oh, no, you know what, we got to cut the CO2 a little bit. No, we want more CO2. In fact, it's an empirical fact that we know now the level we have now, 420, it ain't even optimized for the ecosystem. It ought to be at the level of my good colleague, Professor William Harper from Princeton, have thought about it very deeply. He said the level should be about 1,000 to 1,200. We might not be able to do it because even if we burn all the fossil fuel or so on and so forth, we might not be able to increase because we don't understand the carbon budget well enough to do this. Okay? So it's a very great thing. By the way, the good news is that, indeed, what does the carbon dioxide do if it doesn't change the temperature? Do you all want to know? It makes the planet greener, okay? That's a fact. That's the latest paper. Here's a graph showing the measurement of the greenness from satellite reflectance. So you show that it keep increasing from year 2000, 25 years now, ongoing, okay? And over 68% of the area doing greenness, like undergoing greenness, right? More enhanced greenness. There are regions where it's browning, obviously. It's related to hydrology, all kinds of things. But overall, increase the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere actually make the planet greener. If you don't like planet green, I don't know what else to say. I just want to point out all this region that is actually showing greening region in the whole world, especially in tropical equatorial Africa, India, China. You see Euro-Asia, even Europe. 2024 numbers is actually increasing, and then of course for US and Canada, right? It's a lot of greenness going on now. So China and India is indeed benefiting from this rising carbon dioxide. It's very green. This is another study who quantified the leaf area increase. So another interesting metric to use. But what is the reason for that? The reason is actually not only the carbon dioxide is plant food, right? But it's also related to how efficient the plant is using water. If we have more carbon dioxide, the leaf stomata, those little holes behind the leaf, right? They're closer, so you lose less water. So in fact, most of the region that get green now is actually near the desert margin, in some sense. So that's a very consistent empirical fact that why we want to have more carbon dioxide. Here's data showing you the green and the red dots are showing you the CO2 uptake and the water use efficiency. Evapotranspiration actually telling you that you're not losing that much water. So the really, really good thing about this more carbon dioxide is indeed, it's a biological fact that one cannot change. This is another view of how China, even the Loess Plateau, the region that is very dry and a lot of dust and all that stuff is actually turning green now. It's a very serious thing. Of course, the green hater will continue to say that we got to save our desert, no more green, right? They don't like that. I don't know how to argue about that, but I think it's a very serious problem for them. And then update is that 2025 update, September, is that corn, US corn is in record growing. EU have a lot of wheat harvest, extra. India, rice stock going up. Even South Africa, right? Canola. China, we kind of never can get good data from those things, so it's a bit confusing in China. I want to finish by giving this quote from my good colleague, Professor Richard Lindzen of MIT. I think what he says is truly beautiful in some sense. It's tragic, but he wants to remind us what historians will definitely wonder about in the future centuries is how deeply flawed logic obscured by shrewd and unrelenting propaganda, actually enable a coalition of powerful special interests to convince nearly everyone in the world that CO2 from human industry was a dangerous and planet-destroying toxin. It will be remembered as the greatest mass delusion in the history of the world, that CO2, the life of plants, was considered for a time to be a deadly poison. In that case, I'll end my talk by showing you this. Thank you.